that we now are turning final, as pilots say. We're now deeply embedded in the pattern. We can see enough of what's ahead of us to begin to actually feel the texture of the end of human history. It's no longer an abstraction. Even the straight people who own the world with their long-term and short-term projections, looking at population growth, spread of greenhouse gases, disappearance of the ozone hole, rising third world expectations, so forth and so on. When you propagate all these trends, it seems very clear that business as usual is no longer an option. Nobody's talking about that. So we're either in some kind of final fatal meltdown of the values of Western civilization, revealed now after 1,000 or 2,000 year run to essentially be bankrupt, or we're going to transform ourselves unrecognizably. There really isn't any middle ground. The most radical and least likely future of all, it seems to me, is a future in which we continue just to stumble forward as we have been since the Industrial Revolution. That's no longer an option. And so then the question becomes a sort of a Gnostic conundrum. Is this the final act of some kind of great cosmic tragedy in which intelligence rises out of the slime, is shown to be inadequate and sinks back into the slime? Or is this, a tale of difficulty overcome and heroism won? And are we going to be able to shed the monkey nature and shed the ego and actually move up to some kind of shining ideal? If you think of us as the descendants of the angels, this is a pretty tatty circumstance we've come to rest in. On the other hand, if you think of us as the descendants of shit-hurling apes screeching through the treetops, then it's pretty amazing what has been accomplished here. If you had to somehow meld each problem into the next problem to try and reduce all problems to one, what you would eventually come to is the realization that ego is what is destroying us. Our inability to displace our loyalty away from the unique locus of space and time represented by our own bodies. Community, communalism. These are the things that we fear, that we repress, and that we, at the same time, struggle to realize. The collapse of communism on one level was the collapse of a repressive, nightmarish, paranoid social system. But the dream which lay behind that was a dream of community, of unity, of sisterhood and brotherhood. And the great concern now is that with the collapse of even a pretense of that position, that we are further fragmented, further atomized into individual competing microbes of greed and need. And this is precisely the attitudes which will push us ever closer to species extinction and to global ruin. There has got to be something more to it than just turning people loose to loot the planet so that everyone can pile up more and more stuff which doesn't satisfy anyway. And I think in talking about the future, what we have to somehow do is dematerialize the future. And there are several ways, or many ways, to do this. Somehow, you see, what we have to recognize in the wake of the collapse of communism is that capitalism as well is a system with a fatal flaw that is set against human nature. Capitalism assumes an endlessly exploitable frontier of resources. This we have got not. So capitalism is now essentially, unless it can be radically retooled, an anti-human philosophy. It's literally chewing up the ground we're standing on. But there is nothing in the basic notion of capitalism that says that we have to be thing dealers. This is simply the style of capitalism that we have fallen into.
Supposing in the course of time we reach a point in which inwardly we have sensory perceptions that would enable us to judge and estimate practically everything in nature. How would it be if, for instance, we came to a point where there could be in this world no such a thing as a secret? Supposing that we can read everybody's mind. And, of course, everyone is reading ours at the same time. Supposing there'd be no need for concealment and no possibility of it. Supposing our politicians could never hide anything from us. Supposing our lawyers couldn't. And supposing we had an understanding of our own lives and our own bodies to the degree that a physician could not make a mistake. And supposing all of this costs nothing, because we are born with it. All right, suppose in the same length of time and under the same conditions, we reorganize our theory of nutrition. Perhaps our nutritional theory isn't just exactly right. Perhaps the greater part of our nutrition should not come from the earth, but from light, from the power of energies in space. Supposing the individual could survive indefinitely by developing the abilities of his own magnetic field. Supposing he could travel by teleportation. Perhaps every faculty and power that has been fictionally used in magic is natural and possible to him, with a complete regeneration of his motivations.
You want to save the world? You want to overcome male dominance, the momentum of consumerism, so forth and so on? Every woman should bear only one natural child. This is an interesting idea, whether you take it seriously as program or not. If every woman were to commit herself to bearing only one natural child, the population of the earth would fall by 50% in 40 years without war or famine or epidemic disease. If this program were continued for another 40 years, the population would fall by half again. This means in 80 years, the population of the planet could be reduced 75%. Why have we not heard anything about this, even for it to be denounced? I'm not saying it has to be embraced, but why isn't it a tiny fanatical minority advocating this? I think it's because it's inconceivable in this society to try and practice capitalism in a situation of retreating demographics. Somehow we have to dematerialize existence. And I don't know whether that means virtual reality. Some of you have heard me say that my vision of a perfect future is, 25% of the present world population living in ecological balance, living in an apparently primitive, naked, aboriginal state. But when you step into the minds of those people and look behind their closed eyelids, there are menus hanging in bio-teleelectronic space. Culture, you see, can be downloaded into a chip, installed behind the eyelids, so that it is, freely commandable as an experience in the imagination. But if we insist on continually extracting resources from the earth and fashioning our dreams out of the stuff of earth, then our dreams are destined to turn to nightmare. It can't be any other way. So that's one thing about the future. The future needs to be dematerialized.
Vor uns liegt ein weites Tal, die Sonne scheint, im Glitzerstrahl.